Good evening. This is the Tuesday, August 15th meeting of the Planning Commission. Why don't we go ahead with our roll call?
All right, Stiles.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Zaremski.
Here.
DeVore Leonard.
Here.
Osterholm.
Here.
Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Meg Leatherman.
Great. Okay, we're going to review the agenda quickly. There's not a whole lot on it. And I do want to say that we're trying to keep this meeting to an hour. And so we'll want to sort of move things quickly. So the first thing we have is the review of the minutes of the Tuesday, July 11th meeting. Does anybody have any changes? If there are no changes, I move approval.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's passed. Communications, Judy.
You have in your packet an article that was sent over from Matt Raska, who obviously wanted everyone to take a look at that. That is it for communications.
Great, thank you. Okay, next we have the council and committee reports. Who is involved with the Active Transportation Committee? Anybody? Anybody have a report? Okay.
No report.
How about council, Gavin?
Well, Judy, Meg, I'm trying to think. I mean, we didn't have the first meeting in August because that's our summer break now. So I don't think there is anything to update on.
I mean, really, the big news is the village manager transition piece, which, I mean, everyone sort of knows about, but that's
And we're
kind
going
of
to be
big.
talking about that a little bit later, right? Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then the housing committee, Gavin.
The Housing Committee, Susan.
Well, I'll say that the Housing Committee met, and we were looking at our priorities, and because of the changes that are occurring, we decided that we would not be meeting again until November. We would sort of set things aside. Not that we're stopping it at all. It is still a priority, but because the transition between Josue leaving and Johnny covering for next, 6 months to a year possibly, and the budgets are coming up, that it was just too much for us to be meeting. So we're going to be meeting I think it's the first Thursday or second Thursday in November. Anything you
And-
want to add?
Yeah, I'll just to make sure, co-sign what Susan said. In no way does it indicate there's a lack of interest. Obviously, it wasn't the transition in staffing was not something that we had been factoring in, and it felt like it was reasonable given the need for just capacity on the staff to be able to, it just felt unreasonable to try to plow forward without at least first giving the staff a chance to kind of catch their breath and figure out how to approach things. So yeah, I just want to echo that it's definitely not for lack of interest, just trying to be thoughtful about the situation. I would say that we began talking about 2 meetings ago, and then before the last meeting, Meg had prepared some information about, well, I don't know for sure if it was you or Josue who did it, but there were documents, thank you, about essentially trying to get us on the same page about our goals. And so I think part of the dynamic of pausing is that if we had some already fully baked project and some clear direction, maybe it would be easier to sort of keep that pace going. But part of what we were trying to do with the committee was to set some, sort of terms of engagement or some, things that we agreed upon in terms of where we were going. And it felt like we just needed a little bit more time to do that. So just to give people a little more context, still definitely interest, still definitely plan on moving forward, but felt like with the transition made sense to pause.
Thank you, Gavin. Well said. Okay, then next, citizens' comments. There are no citizens here, so I'm assuming there are no comments. And we don't have any public hearings. So we'll go on to the old business, the village manager transition process and possible impact on Planning Commission priorities. Do you want to address that, Meg, or are you prepared to?
Sure, I think both of us can, but just wanted to say that when we had set up and decided to have this discussion tonight, this meeting, part of it, it wasn't under the impression of Josue leaving, and, oh, here he is. So I had gone through Though, and maybe he can be here to answer some questions if you have any, for sure. But the intent of doing the comprehensive plan overview was to help the planning commission refine their goals and to kind of align with not overlapping projects that we're already doing or already identified and working on in a comprehensive plan, and also just to kind of re-explain the value of a comprehensive plan and give an overview of that. And so that's why I created that spreadsheet that lists out all the different identified projects. But there's now also another discussion that's kind of going parallel with council and staff about all of the projects at the village. And so there's a bit of overlap. And so I didn't want it to seem like we were kind of overstepping in any way with what the council might be deciding either.
Sure.
So just wanted to bring that up and let you know that we are considering what projects and what capacity the village staff has to continue on for the whole village, and that this can be part of that discussion, and we still think it's valuable to have some of that discussion tonight as well, but we might not be able to have a lot of the answers. We might need to pause a little bit too, just kind of like similar to the housing committee, before we can fully commit to what the goals may be, but we don't want to stop necessarily. It is a pause. But and I think part of it isn't mainly just that Josue is leaving, but it's also that, I think this is official, that Johnny is the official interim village manager.
Yes.
So with being so small and so small staffed, when one person now is going to be wearing even more hats, like Johnny would be, make really impactful to the staff and what projects we can tackle. And so we're fully committed to the Planning Commission having goals and identifying projects. We might just need to kind of take that into consideration.
Sure.
And then I know, what else? Do you have want to add to that at all? Or?
Not necessarily. I mean, I
Okay.
think just that was the information that we wanted to make sure everyone had. And I think we knew Susan and Gavin were pretty much in that loop from Housing Committee, but not
Yeah.
sure how much information other folks might have. And so just give you an opportunity, if you have questions about, well, how will this work or that work? This is a good time to throw them out there.
Josue, is there anything that you want to say?
No, I think Meg did an excellent job of covering the overview. I think we recognized that it was important for Planning Commission to go through the process and identifying goals, and we went through the process of identifying what we've accomplished in the comprehensive land use plan. And there's some things in there that are for Planning Commission that you might want to consider. So I think it's long overdue assessment for the reviewing what we've done under the comprehensive land use plan, and I'm impressed of all the things that we've been able to check the boxes off, including the DORA. Sorry, that was a joke about the DORA. It wasn't a very popular thing.
To say what? That happened.
Mhm. So I'm happy to answer any questions
Anybody have
I
questions?
can.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
And we're very sorry to have you go.
Thank you,
But
Susan. I've had
we wish you the best in your new position.
Thank you. It was an amazing 4 years. It's, Kevin Stokes said it well, that this was our chapter number 2 with our Yellow Springs. My first chapter, or my wife and I's first chapter was our time at Antioch, and this is chapter numero 2, and we look forward to chapter number 3. At some point, we expect or hope to be back in Yellow Springs.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then, Meg, then we're on then to the old business with presentation of the comprehensive land
Yeah.
use plan, action items.
Yeah, I think it's.
So, wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Can I just make one comment on the last agenda item? They're interrelated, obviously, but I just, in the same way, and you weren't at the Housing Committee meeting, but hopefully it was, relayed. I just want to say, obviously, the way we led things on the Housing Committee, I obviously am fine with us recalibrating here. So if there are points where, you feel like, hey, I need more time, I've got other stuff going on, I just encourage you to communicate that with us if at any point we're being, I don't know, unreasonable or anything. So just to say, I'm guessing everybody would agree with that, but just to make sure you know that we hear you, there's transitions going on, we have to recalibrate, that's okay.
Okay, let's go ahead with the presentation on the comprehensive land use plan.
Okay.
Is that what you wanted up, or did you?
Yeah, I think, I'll let you know in a second, we can leave that for now. All right, well, so yeah, I was just gonna go over kind of a higher level of the comprehensive plan value and policies, and then talk about the status of the identified projects and where we were at with completing our, of their pending ones, which were quite a few, so. And then, one thing I wanted to highlight was the actual website, if you want to work on that while I'm talking about bringing that up.
The comp plan website?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, okay.
Where we
Yeah.
find the comprehensive.
Yes,
okay.
yeah, I wanted to highlight that, so
And
you
I
guys
brought
knew
my
where it
copy.
was.
I brought my copy because I wanted to point out, and I
Oh,
will do
good.
this later,
Okay.
because I know Gavin talks a lot about our village or larger, and I marked it where about existing land use. It talks about one of the key outcomes from the past planning efforts is the desire for Yellow Springs to remain a village, a population of less than 5,000.
Yeah, okay.
That was,
All right, well, a comprehensive land use plan is a statement of the local government's goals, objectives, and policies, and it's meant to guide the public and private development. It's an overarching policy document, very different than village code or development code, zoning code, in that it is a guiding document. It's not necessarily enforceable by law. It implements zoning and subdivision regulations, location and classifications of streets, public facilities, parks and open space, and housing and economic development programs in general. The purpose is to also identify the needs of the community and then establish policies to address the community needs. And it can be used in a variety of ways, especially in Ohio, since it doesn't have established state laws that give it teeth. Like in some other states across the country, the comprehensive plan is a little bit more like viewed as a code. So it has a little bit more teeth to it. I think for us, it's a little bit more significant than maybe other cities or villages in that one of our primary fundamental goals that is kind of relayed over and over again in the plan is doing development in a sustainable fashion. And what that means is considering multiple different facets at once. And so having a document like this can help us in making sure that we are addressing that as we move forward with growth and development. The comprehensive plan was last updated in 2020 off of the 2010 version called Vision Yellow Springs and Miami Township. The update was actually kicked off in 2019, right before the pandemic, and was slightly delayed for an actual adoption by council until October 2020 because of the pandemic. A steering committee was formed that was made up of planning commission members, various industries, school districts, businesses, nonprofits, and the community members sat on that steering committee, kind of overseeing the responsibility of updating it. One thing that was unique about this update was the creation and adoption of a future land use plan, and I can point that out where that's located once we get to the right site on the website. Public engagement was quite extensive and included a kickoff meeting to initiate the effort with 80 attendees. Wow. And there was an open house was held in January 2020 at Mills Lawn School with approximately 150 attendees, and simultaneously ran 4 online surveys from September 2019 through March 2020, which garnered 327 responses to the survey. So statistically speaking, that's really good responses for surveys of a village this size, and also with the public meetings too. Then in July 2020, a draft of the plan was published and followed up by an all-day outdoor open house at the train station. I know some folks I've talked to remember that quite well. And the Planning Commission recommended approval of the plan in September 2020, and council voted to approve the plan in October 2020. And the recommended approval was modified in 2 scenarios by the village council by removing parking concept maps and also changing the zoning designation of the glass farm from property being zoned high density to medium density, which it is today. And sorry, I don't mean to reach, I do think it's important to show you where it's located on the website, 'cause it has an interactive tool, and there's also links to a lot of the documents and studies that were used in coming up with the background data and demographic data for the report in the end. So I'm just gonna take a second. Don't know if she has, here we go, I'm just gonna go. Is it YS? Yeah, okay. So, let me make this, is it coming up? There it is. There's actually a little bit different information too I noticed on the website than the PDF version. I mean, it's nothing, it is included in my spreadsheet of all the different policies and implementation items. It's very nuanced. It's not, I don't think significant, but just want you to see this here too. So if you go to the village department's planning and zoning, it'll pop up on the right there automatically, comprehensive land use plan 2020. And then it has, I think on the about, has some really good history of how the history of the village was created, when it was established, and the college, Anna College, how it was formed. And then this has more of the specifics on planning history in Yellow Springs. So it talks about the comprehensive plans in the past, the first one being adopted in 1967. I mean, that's great. That's a long time ago, and I think that's why we are where we are, in a sustainable community. Because I mean, some people didn't adopt until much later, I guess. And then the comprehensive plan, these are the various chapters. Now, it also has the community priorities and community trends. And what I wanted to highlight in here was the related studies section. Some of the studies I found since I've been new, trying to find where everything was located. Some of them, this is where where they're located from. They're not really found anywhere else on the web. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for something, it might be on here, like the Parks Master Plan from 1998, sanitary information, bikeway information. I don't think there actually is a historic district map. I looked into that and there is no link to that, so I don't think they're on here. At least not on that site. One thing that I wanted to show you too, with this being the first comprehensive plan that had future land use designations, the map is interactive and it's really helpful. It has multiple layers on it. And it does take a second to load sometime because of that. But it shows the area outside of the village too that's designated through conservation easements. And there's some other thing. Has park layer. It does have where the proposed Dora was that Josue mentioned earlier, which is the outdoor refreshment area, I believe. Dining and outdoor refreshment proposed, but didn't get adopted. So, I mean, really, this comprehensive plan review has been very helpful for me, too, I'll be honest. I mean, I kind of was doing it, but then going through and identifying a lot of the projects, I've been able to figure out, because I sat down with Josue and Johnny, and they gave me, like, the background on a lot of it, like the Dora. I mean, I would have not known that it actually was taken all the way to council and then voted on. The community opposed it, and so it didn't go forward. Yeah. So, okay, get to the side. You click there where it has the 3 lines. That's the legend. I believe that's the layers, no? No, that's just the legend, sorry. I thought it's hard to kind of see. Maybe I'll look over here. That'll probably help. It's the one right next to it with the 3 right here. That's where the good information is. It has multiple layers. It has the future land use designations, which you can turn on and off. It has the West Yellow Springs traditional future land use areas, the identified south, the boundaries. But, and here's what Josue said, if possible. I noticed that today that was on there, shows where it is. But I think getting like a holistic, for me, it was helpful. It's the one place that has the conservation areas all kind of on here with everything else going on. It kind of shows what a significant area it is. Mm-hmm. And you can zoom out. I'll show you that too. which then you can see that it extends outside of the village limits. Wow. And that's the county. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to, don't insinuate anything from this. It was the one place that it was, it's pretty impressive. There's been a lot of work on doing that, for sure. I don't know exactly the details of it, but I'm meeting with Michelle Burns, actually. We'll be meeting soon. She said she might be listening in, so she is hi. So it has parks, also on here, and you can turn all of these off. Bikeways, thoroughfare is really just the existing street system. It's not the future one like that the comprehensive plan does allude to needing. And is where, okay. Oh, cool.
We've got the 1 year, 5 year, and 10-year time of travel.
Oh, neat. Okay, yeah, so it's kind of hidden, but I find it very useful, especially when talking about future growth patterns, future land use designations that we've already established. Okay. So, I didn't think I had too much more. I mean, I think everyone, trying to look back at my notes. Yeah, okay. There, too much more to say. I think everyone was, the intention was that you would read the comprehensive plan and come, having that in your background knowledge, and also the status review that I did, that's on a spreadsheet, that kind of goes through, it outlines every policy chapter by chapter, which there's 24, and then each associated policy has implementation items, which are supposed to take the policy and embed it throughout the community and make that policy more of a reality. And I went through with Josue, like I said, and updated, like, well, if we completed it or not. But I always want to call you President Styles, but I'm sorry. Okay, Chair Styles.
Just call me Susan.
Okay. She had some problem. I think a couple other commissioners had problem with being able to see it on their computer, and I suggested that before the meeting that maybe I could print off a bigger copy for you. And since we probably will have to pause a little bit anyways, I mean, maybe for another meeting about this, I could do that, and then I'm just brainstorming.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to direct
absolutely.
things. That you could, once you could actually review it, we could go into more depth, but I'll still highlight it tonight.
Yep.
So
Is that okay with folks? What I was saying was it was too small for me to read.
Oh, just one.
Even a magnifying glass it was.
Yeah. So there's 24 policies throughout the whole plan, which I kind of pulled together. It doesn't necessarily say this is a policy, but policy is a little bit more like not action items, more like not a task that someone can complete. They're more of like an end goal or a visioning type discussion point. So I pulled those together in the spreadsheet. And then with each of those, there's 53 projects or implementation tasks, items, kind of was what I was talking about them. And I wanted to highlight that 19 of them are considered complete, or maybe that it would be, there's probably some little bit of discussion we could have about what we consider to be complete as well. I'm open to that. And I only say that because sometimes people, like, for example, people will say, there's a problem with parking. Okay, we're going to address the problem with parking, but what that means to me might be we're going to build a parking garage. And what that means to someone else means that we're going to ride bikes instead of cars. So, I mean, I'm open to what it actually means to you, especially if you guys were here with the community outreach and the community involvement, and you got that feedback firsthand. I'm new, so I don't want to come across like I'm saying something has been addressed when I wasn't even here either, so open to that feedback. And then 22 of those projects are ongoing and active right now, and that leaves us with 12 that we consider to have not really started in any fashion, and they're highlighted as red. And I thought that might be a place for us to start looking at what planning commission goals might be, would be going off of the pending ones. And
And the pending ones, then you put
In the
listed
memo.
listed separately in our memo.
Yes.
And I, okay, and so the 22 that are being worked on,
Yeah.
there's some movement in each of those?
Yes,
Okay.
and I would say, like, with having the, like, new frame of work, like lens we're working through, with having Johnny being the interim, that, you know, those will be something that, a lot of those, we will continue no matter, we will be continuing. There might be a little bit more of a pause than what we initially expected, but we'll be continuing, and staff will be. The pending ones will probably be even more pushed out, or not even wanting to start for quite a while, or I guess we're open to discussion on what the commission might think about a couple of them, but. And then also, I put like a pros, cons
Yes.
in the memo.
Yeah.
That was just me, and that was just me, like, pretty quickly trying to just get a discussion going.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you know, we didn't have the time to sit down with staff and get all of their additional input on what pros and cons could be, but I thought it might be at least a good point to start the discussion.
And I guess I do want to get the discussion going, but I did want to ask, on page 3, so that's where you have the items that are pending. And this is in a couple of them. It has, the second one has new trail from LMST. What is LMST? I looked and couldn't find it.
Little Miami Scenic Trail.
Yes,
Yeah.
Little Miami Scenic Trail.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I was going Limestone Street, and I thought, what the heck?
Limestone.
It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
It did
thank you.
take me a minute to realize that too.
I didn't get it right off either.
So I guess we could just go down the pending ones if we want, or, I don't know, what do you think?
So I have a
Susan?
question. What actually could we do? Like, I mean, I know that the planning commission can suggest changes to zoning rules, and then there was this thing about the, keeping the housing up, about like house maintenance,
Oh, property maintenance.
which I think is really an interesting thing, but I probably would make things worse. But what are the range of things that we actually could do something, you know, as a planning commission, you know?
I think like a subcommittee, similar to, you know, the housing committee, a subcommittee of the planning commission that could help, like, just touch base with staff. I think each of them would be a little bit different, like the ADU guide, for example. That might be something that the planning commission could, maybe one or two members could do. And
Okay.
you could do research and look at other cities and maybe what they did, and kind of turn it, I say city, sorry, village. I got in trouble at council for that, so I'm really trying to not say city, village. Yeah, so you could look at other villages, do research, and then, you know, even do some of the legwork. I think that's possible. I mean, especially with us being, you know, resource limited, I guess would be the word.
And that's one of them that I would like to see us move on, but I had sort of a different idea. I think that it should be like one page, just briefly telling people what they need, and then you can lead them to other things. Like Matt has provided a detailed document about it, and if somebody wants to look at that, but what does it take for somebody if they want to do it? They need to have, you know, the little drawing, they need to go to
Yeah.
you, they need to talk with you about it, then, you know, they come before the planning commission. Just something that is pretty simple, that it is 1 or 2 pages that somebody can look at, and then you can lead them to other things if they need it. Because they don't initially, a lot of people think they need an architectural drawing. They don't. They don't initially. And so just,
Oh, for like the accessory structure, the permit,
Yes.
the zoning permit, yeah, yeah.
yes. So
Building,
because although you're saying you're not sure if it has a direct impact on adding more living units, I think that it does. I think that we've seen, for ones that have come to us, a number of them they've been doing them for family members.
Mhm. We get a lot of calls on them. I would say it'd be helpful.
So I think that's something that would actually help with housing in town, and it is a conditional use all across the village, so in any residential area, it could be done.
Yeah, so that's an example, and then like the property maintenance one, which came out of the housing chapter of the policies, because the intent was that if we maintain our old housing and keep it up to speed, then maybe those units could be used longer term, right? And so
Sure.
more housing. That would probably require, if there was a committee, a planning commission committee for that, you could do research on maybe what other areas did, but it is gonna be an uphill battle, I mean, not uphill battle, but longer term, I guess.
Sure.
And you see the pros and cons, I mean, I don't know, we wanna be,
Well, I think it could very easily dovetail with trying to figure out how to get the resources to people, because it's, fixing old houses is, it's usually, for a lot of folks, just getting on a ladder is complicated.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you another question about this. So it sounds like we've done a lot of stuff on the comprehensive land use plan, and we should be tooting our horn about this and, and making sure that people know about it. So the same thing with, if you did have this one-page thing about how to do an accessory dwelling unit, how does this stuff get communicated? I don't imagine that there are a whole lot of people watching us on public access right now.
I think there's millions.
I can hear popcorn popping
Maybe
right now.
tens of people.
Tens of people.
Well, I wanted to mention about the property maintenance. One of the
Yeah.
things is, as you said, getting out information. Home Inc. has gotten an incredibly large grant every year to do home repair.
Okay.
And they have been doing it, and it's for anybody in the village. You have to, I think, qualify income-wise, but it is, so they've been helping like 10 or more families a year. And so a program like that should be advertised more. Now, they've been
Well,
effective at
we are.
getting it out.
We absolutely advertise that for
Yeah.
them and with them, so.
Yes.
Okay.
But we can't, that couldn't go in any permanent document, they may not get the grant next year.
Yeah.
But we do the, advertising with it. I'm just saying, it could be used as a partner piece to
Right.
something planning commission wanted to do, but, yeah.
I'm not quite clear, we've been talking about a little bit the issue of, there's housing in town that's presumably rental, maybe not just rental housing in town that is in need of repair, substandard, let's call it, and whatever. And I'm not quite sure what planning commission role might be in that. Planning commission has code, some of which affects housing and all that. And whether particular units adhere to the code or not is not a planning commission issue. That's sort of I'll call it a housing inspection. That's more of a administrative function. And then in terms of doing something like that, in terms of dealing with it, then becomes an administrative function for the village staff, if you're going to do that. But none of that is planning commission.
Well, if we were to write what was the name of this? The house maintenance, what was you had a term in there.
Proactively enforce property maintenance codes to prevent
that one.
existing housing. That
Yeah,
one.
property maintenance code.
Oh.
The planning commission could propose a property maintenance code. That's the part of this. And then we could also, try and see how we could make this, something like that, actually really workable.
The thing is,
Who's our target?
we are unable to even keep up with sidewalks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I cannot even imagine
Yes. I
taking
agree.
on homes. And
Yeah.
people right now scream about feeling violated when there's a door knocker on their door saying, oh, by the way, you need to get your sidewalk in compliance. Can you even imagine the response if we're saying, now your house isn't the way we want to see your
Yes,
house
yes.
being or looking? I just can't see that flying in this town. But what I can see working is something like assistance.
To
We used
homeowners.
for insulating your home,
Yes.
for doing
Yeah,
those
yeah.
kinds of things, that kind of.
Right.
But not on the enforcement end.
Because the enforcement, what can happen is you could actually make somebody homeless. If the
Yes.
house isn't up to code and we don't want
Yeah,
to do
right,
that.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I experienced that, like, friction with my last job in Astoria. I mean, not moving forward with some issues because I didn't want to make people homeless.
Yeah.
I mean, that was,
Josue.
There's a long road to get it there. Judy stated it correctly, that there's a lot of emotions about sidewalk and these door knockers. I put door
Oh, yeah.
knockers last week on 11 folks, and almost all of them called to complain about it. And they're impeding free passage on the sidewalk. So, but it is, I think we need to start making work towards property maintenance enforcement. It doesn't need to be right away, but I think we need to change the culture around the conditions of which our homes are kept. And I'm not talking about aesthetics, I'm talking about just
Yeah.
safety issues.
Yes, safety.
Safety, if you recall when we were talking about the ordinance removing the discrimination on source of income, essentially requiring that all landlords accept Section 8 vouchers. There was an issue because there was some concern about housing standards that were required to accept Section 8 vouchers. And I understood the concern, but, you know, those standards are very minimal.
Yes.
They're very minimal. And the concern came out from our constituents because some of those basic standards could be met. So I think we need to change some of the culture around the safety conditions of our rental units in town. And this is a long-term plan that we need to put together to, how do we change the culture and work towards improving properties in the village?
Yeah, certainly the ideal situation with something like this would be not just somebody telling you that you needed to fix your house, but, having some way that, it works hand in hand with the resources to help people, maintain their houses.
Correct.
So that it's, that it's really offering them help, not telling them
And you have to consider the implications it has of, if our housing stock, or particularly the rental stock, goes up in quality, you're gonna see a corresponding increase in rent cost, because those property owners are investing more in their properties. So I think those two things are correlated, so you have to be mindful of what that consequence could be.
But just to make it explicit, the other side of that equation is that there certainly are people who are building equity, who have plenty of money, but who are not doing basic safety improvements and upgrades into their properties in a way that is, I guess, at the most basic concern would be unsafe for the people who are living in those units. So just, there's a balancing act to find. It's complicated, it's long-term, but I think the idea of trying to figure out some sort of recognition that these are dynamics, I don't know whether it's, I'm not advocating for saying this should be implemented.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Right, and from experience here at the village, during my time here up until this weekend, we had only condemned one home. And it was a challenge to condemn this one home because we did not have property maintenance ordinance on our books to make it easier for us. So it had to be so bad that we had needed three entities to sign off, health department and fire department, before we could condemn a property.
So, well, could I ask a question because I feel like you might be the best while you're up here? I think it gets to, I think one of y'all asked it, which is like how do we communicate this? So I guess the two questions are, how do we prioritize these items? So you got this list in 2020 of all these things to do. Can you just share a little bit about how do you go about deciding which of these things do you do and which things that you don't do and which things do you do in what order, basically? And anything that's relevant about what Planning Commission did or didn't do as part of that. And then similarly, how do we revisit this plan? Is it part of onboarding? How are we communicating externally about it? Are there check-ins that happen? That would be helpful.
Yeah, there are a couple of things in your question there. So how do we prioritize the projects? A lot of it has come about what's been in the works already. So what is their momentum for? And a lot of these projects, there's been some momentum, and it's easier to get them going because there's some momentum. Some have come about because we are facing particular challenge or opportunities that just make sense to execute them. So building department is a good example. With the building department, it was easy to get momentum from staff, from council, and business owners, because our businesses were frustrated with Greene County Building Department. We were looking at economic opportunities, Cresco, the comedy club, the radio stations, a lot of business opportunity that would have not been possible under the county's building department. So there was natural synergy there to do the building department and do other pieces of legislation that made that happen. Once we started the ball rolling on that and we got that, it was easy to update our tap fees and other things, because we were into the weeds of what those costs were, and we were losing money, or we needed to change the way we were doing business. So there's a natural momentum that some of these projects have had that made it easier to move them forward. Others have been, what's our local strategy? Last year and this year, we were focusing a lot on economic development. And part of that was because we had put a lot of effort on housing. We thought, okay, at housing, how much pressure could we put in our community on housing? At one point, we had 250 units of housing in development, or in some stage of planning and development. So we were thinking that 2023 and onward, we were going to shift back to getting more jobs. A lot of that was based on aligning ourselves with what's happening at the state level. The state and the governor's office is putting a lot of effort and money behind economic development for the entire state. Just down the street from us is Honda and LG are building a plant. I just read today in the Dayton Business Journal that Sydney, Ohio got another big EV battery film manufacturer that's going to bring in 1,200 jobs. So there's a lot of jobs that are happening. So we thought our pivot was going to be back to economic development, because we wanted to ride that wave and capture some of those opportunities. So that was the natural momentum to move forward. There are other projects that plainly is there a squeaky wheel behind it? And I was just honest, there's some things that people, one or a particular group of people can get behind, and it takes attention and we move on it. I think the team tries to be, well, no, I don't think, I know the team tries to be strategic in finding projects that work well together, that there's synergy, and projects that have a multiplier effect. Things that if we do this one thing, get this one thing done, it helps others move along. How do we communicate that? I think that's our biggest weakness right now, and it's not new. We've had it the entire time I've been here. There's times where we fall short on communication. There's times where we over-communicate and it backfires, and we just haven't been able to find the right method, the right channel, the right amount, and the right words. And I'll say all those things because sometimes the wording is important. Sometimes our residents have been freaked out when we said we need more housing without giving it a particular value. Why is it important, the housing? Our community, there's a major tax burden. If we expand our tax base, that will go a long way for reducing costs for folks. Getting more utility customers to our enterprises. Our utility enterprises will help manage costs and reduce the increases over the years. But we struggle to have that, deliver that message in a way that resonates with our constituency and our policymakers or council, and we don't always get it right. So you asked about the projects, the communication. There's a third item in there?
I was just, asked about onboarding.
Onboarding.
To some degree, this is, Meg, this is kind of like there's like a looking back, and then you'll be the one, I think, carrying a lot of this going forward. So I think, hopefully I'm telegraphing where I'm going, which is just, hey, why don't we do an annual check-in with council? I know, like, I came on board, I think the comp plan was mentioned at different points, but there was never like a, hey, here's the full overview. I think it would be healthy, to just make this like that's part of a required new council member gets this. Same thing, I don't know if planning commission folks, if that happens, that seems like it would be healthy. An annual process of check, and I'm not talking about just email somebody the comp plan. I'm saying like talk it through a little bit. Check to see that there's some recognition of a big complex document. I think it could be valuable at council too. Some of these kinds of discussions, like the idea that there was a focus on economic development in a year and a half on council, the amount of times we talked about economic development was virtually zero. So it's mostly a staff-driven decision,
Right.
which is, I'm not saying that's bad. I agree with the fact that my assumption is that staff is generally strategic about its decisions. But I think it's healthy to get the community involved as a communication tool at council and at planning commission so that we can help spread the word to folks of all the good things that are happening.
Yeah.
So maybe just, I mean, my first reaction is maybe a on-board review and then like an annual review at council and an annual review at planning commission of how we're doing with our comp plan and some discussion around, you know, prioritization of feedback. Seems like it'd be healthy.
So is there, so the comprehensive land use plan goes into some of the, it goes into the land and some of the economics, but is there something also sort of analogous to that to cover other things, utilities and schools, and is there?
Yes, every year we do our own strategic planning, where we
Okay.
identify team priorities. We
Okay.
do strategic planning with council, we do retreats, and we try to find.
But is there something that captures the sentiment of the village in the same way the comprehensive land use plan
Of
did?
the village? No, we had talked about doing another visioning
Yeah.
with the community. We haven't gotten to.
And I would just say strategic planning, and we've talked, I think that's like it'd be a generous term in terms of, we do some goal setting conversations. No, and I'll just say in all seriousness, I think it's a gap, right? And we've talked about it, you acknowledge this, I'm not like,
Yeah.
it's a gap. We don't have a strategic plan in the village. We have parts of things, and then we have people who prioritize stuff, for sure. But this implementation, how do we choose it? Why are we doing it? Communicated and comprehensively done, that doesn't exist.
We have.
Question I have about, because several of these require a consultant. Is there anybody on staff that does grant writing, or is that usually done through a consultant?
We do some.
Is that done internally?
We do some, but most of the grants, the big grants that we've hired, they've been secured with partnerships. So
Okay.
we have Choice One does grant writing for us,
Okay.
LJB
Okay.
did our active transportation plan and secured the.
Okay,
yeah.
because I wondered, because several of the things require, you
Right.
know, like the extending the trails, the sidewalks and that, it said you'd need to get grant funding, and so that takes
Yeah.
somebody writing that.
And we've
Okay.
expanded on partnerships to help build the capacity to secure grants, so we're a member of SOPAC now. AMP has built a fundraising development office that helps members.
And is there money in the budget for these consultants to do that? Or is that something that has to be planned in for the next year?
We have some. So
Okay.
all the enterprises, we have some professional services budget in there. For example, we hired electric engineering out of the electric enterprise. There are a few things that we paid out of the enterprises.
Yeah.
In the general fund, we have it in the administration budget, and we also have it in economic development. So should we need professional services, we have some
But like
designated.
for the parks plan, I think that would be new. I mean,
Yes,
for
that would
example-
be new.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think, making sure to, like, extending on Gavin's point about doing this annually. I think we would want to do that the same, or coordinate on budget time for those types of things. Budget's coming up, and then, yeah, so that way we would know what projects we would want to be requesting funding for, and then council could potentially say yay or nay this year, you know.
Okay. So I think we don't have a lot of time, and we have, Meg identified and I can't remember how many they were, 11 or whatever, that are to be worked on. And so I thought, why don't we each tell, what is your one priority, your one or two priorities that you see in here?
So what I would like to perhaps expand on that just a teeny bit is because I have a priority, let's say, that's not included on this, that needs to be spelled out a little more robustly in the comprehensive plan. And I'm not quite sure how we address that, how we approach that, okay? So if you want to, do that, that's fine, but I'm going to identify something
Okay,
that's not on the list.
Identify if there's anybody else, like I will start that, I wanted to, on the page 4, I mentioned before about the accessory dwelling units. I'd like to see us, because I'm looking at housing. And so on page 4, exploring establishing a community reinvestment area. I think that, and it's on the glass farm, I think that's, would be something good to think about for housing.
Yeah, I'm interested in this review of the existing zoning requirements to whether they add cost to housing developments or reduce density. I mean, I know that we've talked about zoning as being like a big Pandora's box that we don't really want to open, but, you know, maybe we should start thinking about, you know, some of that and planning for eventually when we do open up that can of worms.
Sure. And we actually have done some of that.
Yeah.
Because over the years, we've reduced the size of lots to keep people. There is no minimum size of a house, so you can build a tiny house on lots. I mean, we've done a lot of things
Yeah.
to help with that, but I think that's a good idea.
Oh, sorry, before you move on, so just to make sure, so review whether existing zoning requirements add cost to housing
Yes.
developments or, okay, that one,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Okay, Gary.
Okay, so I'd like to identify something that needs to be added to the list, and it has to do with bike parking. I really scoured both the comprehensive plan and the active transport plan, and I keep, you know, so much of it's talking about, you know, bike trail, bike route, bike transportation, and in a number of places, it alludes to parking. And I found in one spot, and of course I didn't write it down, there's actually one line item in one of the other documents, it actually says bicycle parking,
Okay.
colon, and it's like 3 words. And it either said staff responsibility or village council responsibility, and it says nothing more, okay? So what I would like to have added into the plan is that we actually work on what do you want to call it, public bicycle parking,
Yes.
okay?
Okay.
And that actually
Thank
be
you.
something.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Being one that I ride my bike around town, and I think I've told you before.
And then there's
with
no place
my
to put it once you get to where you're
grandkids and
going.
husband rode to a restaurant, and like, there's no place to hook up your bikes to lock
Yeah.
them, or there's a place maybe you could lock 1 or 2, but you can't lock 4.
Right.
So I think that's a great idea.
And so it needs
Gavin.
to be addressed.
I think I've already kind of made for me, it's less about the specific items and more about the communication, the prioritization. That's what I would prioritize energy toward.
Okay, thank you. And Scott?
Mine's more on housing, like, first chance we get, I would love to see us get another apartment complex in here.
Another apartment complex.
Yeah, I believe that would also help us with the affordable housing, which I know is one of your passions. And that's one of mine, too.
Okay. And I have to say, that is something that the housing group, if I'm allowed to say, talked about, because when the council met and talked about housing, I think every council member said apartments was a priority.
That's true,
So,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Well, that's great. This has been wonderful. Thank you, guys.
okay. We've just solved all the problems.
Yeah,
For
right.
planning.
Solved it.
So like,
Well, that was
so
easy.
do we have idea on next steps or like the next meeting? Agenda planning, is that?
You have-
Kind of what I was alluding.
So final plat, is that set?
It's submitted and ready to go, yes.
Okay.
Final plat for the next meeting.
Well, and you
Okay.
brought it up, and I don't know if it's something that you want to do, but I think that creating the quickie brochure on ADU is extremely doable. What Matt Raska sent was a brochure for another city. That's not.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that it could be even a quick flow chart. If you have this, then go here. If you don't have that, you need to talk to this person. Whatever, but that's doable and could be 2 of you getting together, creating it, and then if you get far enough, then maybe we put in the budget some money for creating that brochure and, you know,
Yeah.
disseminating it, that kind of thing. So just, I guess, put that in your mind if you
Okay.
want to throw something on for the next agenda for create a subcommittee to do this.
Okay.
by this time if you want to get it in next year's budget. That you don't have to decide it right now, but if we know before next time, then we can get some traction going on those things.
Okay.
And I would like, if you don't mind, like, maybe just put in the comp plan review discussion on the next agenda as well, just because I think it'll give me, I like the comp plan, it helps me prioritize too my work and also the values of the community and decision that I'm making, decisions, you know, it's input to that. I think I can give an update of how staff is doing with the projects and the overview of it.
So you're talking about the sheets that you
Yeah,
have?
more of
that
the
they couldn't
sheet,
read,
and then you
put them out so they can read them.
Yeah.
You mean you wanted to read them? Okay.
Yeah, and then, you know, I'll have more information there about the transition, and maybe we could refine it a little bit more.
Sure, that sounds great.
And then I'll let Johnny get his feet wet.
So,
Yeah.
just, go ahead, Gary, sorry.
Well, you go ahead, because I have a question after.
So I did want to just mention, Meg, you mentioned like kind of lining up the like review with the budget. So the current conversation at the Finance Committee about the budget process, that would fit pretty well with the idea of essentially commissions, all the commissions creating budgets and bringing them to, the budget process early essentially for the following year. So just to mention that to my knowledge, at least in the last year, there hasn't been a budget ask from Planning Commission. I don't know if that's happened in the past.
Oh, yeah.
It has, okay.
That's why we sort of wave our arms around and go, whoa, whoa, if you want zoning code updates, you better budget for it. Yeah, that's why I'm saying, because if you want to create a brochure, that's money. If you want to,
Great.
yes, that
So
has
then maybe we should make a specific note to talk about any budget asks that's sort of connected to that conversation, Meg, that you were talking about related to the chart you made? Because we're right up on that point now. You know, where if there
Right.
are things that we want to put in,
Okay.
now's the time.
Okay.
I know it's only
So-
August, but
But yeah,
no,
So-
it comes fast.
So I have a question about how to go about approaching something. So what I brought up earlier about, comprehensive plan, the bike parking thing, that has to do with public land, where we would, developing a plan for adding bike parking on village-owned property, basically. So what I also wanted to explore is, I also looked a bit through the zoning code, and within the zoning code, there's a chapter on off-street parking and loading, and there's a robust treatment with quite a lot, tables and all that, with an outline of dealing with off-street parking for cars, although it actually never says cars in it. And right above it is the spot for bike parking, which it just sort of says accommodation for bicycle parking is encouraged, which obviously doesn't really mean much and doesn't have teeth to it. What I would be interested in understanding is because I have found standards and guidelines that are applicable from a national organization, that what I would like to see is our zoning code, whenever it's going to go through a revision, to add a corresponding outline for bike parking that's analogous to the existing parking requirements for cars. And obviously, you put it in the code like this, and it has to do with, new construction and I guess, construction that comes to Planning Commission for approval, for one thing or another. So what I don't understand well is, how do we deal with putting something together for potential inclusion for a code revision? Okay? Is it just something we just work on and have it float in space whenever whomever is ready to do a code revision? Or is there something else that we should?
Could something like that be a text amendment? Or no, is that too big?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it is what it is, and that's why.
Could be a text amendment.
I mean, if the
Yeah.
people on either side of you are, I don't agree that should be there, then no, it doesn't get traction. if everyone sitting at the table thinks, okay, yep, that would be something that we would, beyond where it is now, which is parking, bike parking is an offset to other kinds of parking, it's there. But
Yeah.
if you wanted it to be mandated and more robustly,
Yes.
then someone would have to also explore what are the implications of that? What's the downside? What's the upside? All the stuff. So that means probably you'd want to grab yourself a little subcommittee.
Or what about active transportation? Don't they actually already?
They're not looking at
You're
the
involved in
implication for
that.
this.
Yeah, I'm on
You're not-
active transport, and to me, it's a subtlety. Parking, bike parking is not really transport, and the active transport group has been dealing with actual, when you're dealing with physical motion
So
and this
you
stuff.
need a subcommittee for the non-active transport.
You need, well,
Parking of bikes.
no, because what you've brought up a few times, and I've gone, Gary, stop, when you have tried to make developers do a thing with bike parking.
Yes,
That's not
No, I
in the
know,
code.
it's not in the code. So how do we get something
So,
in the code?
no,
It's
it's
a
not
text
active
amendment.
transportation. It is the zoning code, and that's what I'm saying, yeah. You should probably get a couple of you to look at what is the downside, upside, all the ramifications, because yes, that would be a text amendment.
So
Yeah,
we
right.
could put that on, since, we've sort of identified what are our priorities. And so we can put that on it, and as she said, see if it gets traction. If any one of us are willing to be on a committee with you. And
Well, I like how you, well, I appreciate how you stated that. I'm very encouraged now.
sorry I made it sound like that.
It's okay, I hear that at home all the time.
But to, Gary, I guess I would think about this kind of like we did when we did some of the text amendments with the zoning conversations over this year. To me, this feels less like this is the job of the planning commission, and more like or if you want to build a set of people that think about it, and then talk to staff about it, and kind of get a sense of how it's going, and then if it feels like it's relevant, then bring it to planning commission.
Yeah, I mean,
And it would typically,
that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's like, it'd be easy enough, well, I could go ahead and just work on it with
Yeah.
the key people, I think, who understand the code and all that, and put together a rough draft to bring for review.
Yes,
yeah.
And,
Go for
okay.
it.
yep, I agree.
Good discussion.
Okay, we have come to a little bit after 7. Are we ready to adjourn?
Sure. Is that a motion? I'll second it.
Okay, I move we adjourn. It's been seconded, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Okay.